Deepak, he's saying that he has significant exposure in the HDFC Mid-Cap Opportunities Fund. He's asking, what do these stress test results mean for this particular fund? It's a large fund, HDFC Mid-Cap Opportunities. The fund size is over 60,100 crores, a big one. Now let's come to the liquidity factor, what these stress test results tell us. It will take 23 days for this fund to sell down 50% of its portfolio and 12 days to sell down 25% of its portfolio. The top 10 investor concentration, that's also an important one. So the top 10 investors of the fund, how much of the fund do they hold? 1.41%. And then, of course, we have to take a look at the mix between mid-cap, large-cap and small-cap. So this fund holds about 66% in mid-caps, about 13% in large-caps, and about 14.5% in small caps. Feroze, let me toss it to you. Now, we have all this new data that as an investor, I'm aware of. How should I make sense of it for the HDFC Mid-Cap Power Fund?
Yes, so I think if you look at the data points which are newly there, I think those data points don't show anything alarming. So Deepak does not have to take action on this fund on the new data points which have emerged, point one. If you look at 23 days and 12 days, in isolation, they will not be such meaningful numbers. If you look at it relatively, of how that fares with the rest of them, it'll become a more meaningful number. Any number gets meaning with the context you draw up around it. Having said which, so I think 23 and 12 days is something which I think is very, very good for a 61,000 crore, 60,000 plus odd crore and the largest mid-cap scheme. Second, I think the liquidity has also been kept in mind. Chirag Setalwad is a great fund manager, a fund which has been created in 20 years, practically, if I remember right, has the top 10 holders of the fund have 1.4% of 60,000 crores, which is about 700-800 crores. So the top 10 investors of the fund have 80 crore rupees as one specific individual or a corporate. So that's not too much of a concentration. That's because of the nature of the fund's existence of long periods of time. So Deepak, nothing to worry. From a liquidity perspective, having 12% in large cap is a great prudent strategy. In spite of that, beating benchmarks over long periods of time where mid caps outperform large caps, especially in the broader market rally, we have seen Chirag has been able to outperform by still having 12-13% in large caps. So that's great. Third, I think the fund size is great. There's not too much concentration across top 10 investors. Those 10 guys can decide to liquidate and 10,000 crore goes away. It is just 800 crores in the top 10 investors. So I would say nothing to worry. Great data, better than I would expect the largest fund to throw up.
Okay, awesome. And see, this reminds me, viewers, please remember, see, when we spoke about this fund, how I didn't start with 1-year return, 3-year return, and 5-year return. I started with a lot of the other data points that we typically don't consider. And Mohit, I think that's the whole point of this exercise, to get people to think more laterally than just be return oriented. So HDFC Mid-Cap Opportunities, what's your take?
Look, I think 60,000 odd crores, it's the largest fund in the mid-cap segment, controls 20% of the AUM of the entire segment, Surabhi, right? So Chirag Setalwad managing that size is a phenomenal job. And the way he has conducted the fund, absolutely no red flags in the data. I think you've rightly pointed out the lens of judging has kind of changed. The needle has moved towards risk parameters and other parameters. If you see at the turnover ratio, it's 19%, right? So for a mid-cap fund of that size, shows the kind of conviction a fund manager is running. The turnover ratio is fairly low. You look at the P ratio, right? And all those matrices are now published. The P ratio of the fund is lower than the benchmark P ratio, which is again a great sign. Running a fund of that size and not overshooting on the valuations or on the kind of stocks, the stock picking ability of the fund manager, it speaks volumes about that, right? And obviously the breakup of market cap, which is again fantastic, 65%, which is mandatory in mid cap, small portion in a small cap, which can give him the desired alpha, and large cap obviously to provide stability and liquidity and the kind of redemptions if someday some redemption pressure were to arise. But even on the liquidity days, right, the fund is extremely well poised for that kind of size. 23 days, I think it's fantastic. So I think it's a great, great fund.